foreign students who are studying here must have picked up a little bit of Hindi. So I don't think it should be a big problem. But I try to mix both the languages so that there is something local and there is something global as well, as what the human rights also demand, I believe. So friends, frankly speaking, I don't consider myself adequately qualified to deliver an address on human rights and human values. It requires specialized training and qualification. But I think when we talk about human rights, the subject, the enormity of it, it's so much that even a lay person like me can certainly reflect on the basis of my understanding of the subject and combining it with the present context all over the world. It's a web of complex issues. It's very easy to talk about human rights and perhaps very, very difficult to really establish in a demonstrable manner our commitment to human rights. To a certain extent, it starts from our families, because family is the fundamental unit of any society. And in our families also, perhaps this kind of training is required informally, though, that we have to take care of the human rights of each other. In a way, in our traditional families, it used to happen in the olden days, especially when our parents also were told, and rightly so, that prapte tu shodasha varshe putra mitravat acharit, which means that at the age of 16, you must be treating your kids also as your friends. So in a way, it talks about human dignity, and human dignity is an essential part of human rights. So this has been in our traditions, in our culture. There are a number of references in our scriptures as well. The term human right may not be there in existence and in those times, but to say that human rights is a modern concept, a modern idea, and it is only in the West that people initially started talking about human rights, I believe it's something far from the facts. But then, as it happens, there are a number of issues which require deeper analysis, because when the questions continue to bother us, the answers are very difficult to find. This is because there are many distortions that have crept in our social system, our political system, which unfortunately have given birth to certain fundamentals that are in a way influencing our day-to-day conduct in our public life, in our political life, in our social life. For example, although human rights is something nobody would be opposing, nobody would be contesting, at times it becomes like a holy cow. Nobody feeds, but nobody kills. Because politically it is incorrect to go against human rights, which is understandable. But point is, how do we deal with issues like, and there are 5 issues which I thought I should identify and mention over here. Number 1, we still are not free from the consideration that might is always right. Every talk of human rights, I believe, becomes illogical if we surrender to the fact when we consider that might is always right. I believe this has definitely crippled human rights of several people who just do not have even any opportunity to voice their grievances because they don't have strength, they are the weakest. And therefore, how to deal with this understanding, consideration, a kind of an oblique acceptance of the fact that might is always right is a challenge. Second is, in a way, that is inherent to our Westminster model of democracy, where 51 is everything and 49 is nothing. I think this is something very, very challenging for all of us who take pride in being the mother of democracy as a country. And we are all citizens of a democratic country, but then how to rise above 51 is everything and 49 is nothing is a big challenge. The third challenge is, in a way, in tune with the second challenge which I referred to. How can we allow, and especially in a globalized world, where the consideration, unspoken kind of recognition to the fact that market decides all. If there is no market, there is nothing. If there is market, then there is everything. So, I come from Maharashtra, and the theatre movement in Maharashtra is very strong. It has a very long tradition as well. Some few years before, there was a play which made history kind of in Maharashtra theatre, and the title of the play was The Final Draft. So the story goes like this, that a playwright writes a play and then he tries to exchange notes with some of his colleagues. And few of them initially say, oh, wonderful play, but then if you write this, it will hurt the emotions of XYZ, so you change it. So he changes. Then he again shows it to somebody else. He says, oh, wonderful, but you know, these particular lines, they may hurt the emotions of this particular community, so change it. Likewise, the final draft doesn't arrive at all. So that is the final draft, which means that we meekly surrender to the market forces. Wherever there is market, perhaps you can make a point. If there is no market, your voice is less likely to be heard. Now, how do we deal with the human rights issues in all these scenarios? That is what is the critical question which I am trying to bring to the fore and pointing it out. Secondly, again, as a logical corollary to this market decides all phenomenon, is the fact that we are today compelled by what some knowledgeable persons describe as the attention economy. We are in an attention economy. While we are sitting here, I am sure many of you must have already taken some pictures and posted them on your Facebook or Twitter or wherever. So the speed, within how many minutes you are doing it, and how much time are you able to attract the attention of the people, and how many people. Unfortunately, we are in a situation that all these things matter more than what you show, what you say, what you want to communicate. All these things have become secondary. This again, I believe, has the potential of crippling of the human rights of many. There are many people who may not have the art of being there in a very effective manner on social media platforms. But does that mean that we will not consider them? Today, we are in an era where the younger generation, the Generation Z, as what they call perhaps, the Z is further than that. So they say that if you are not on the Facebook, perhaps you are not in the world. I mean, that is the sorry state of affairs where we are. I am not against any social media platform though, but still, we need to deal with these distortions. That is what I am trying to bring to the fore. Lastly, yesterday only there was a brilliant article on this Bengal debate in the Times of India. And the writer has used a very brilliant statement. The writer says, absence of evidence doesn't mean evidence of absence. I believe for those with legal minds here need to understand this, that even if something is not established in a demonstrable manner, perhaps it is wrong to say that it is not existing. And therefore, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. This is also, I think, something which has the potential of challenging the fundamentals of human rights, as I understand. So, in a scenario like this, these are the 5 distortions which are threatening the human rights and threatening human rights as human values more particularly. If I recount them again, number 1, the understanding or the habit of considering that might is right. Also the phenomenon where we consider 51 is everything and 49 is nothing, which has distorted the very idea of democracy, as I understand as a student of political science. Thirdly, allowing the phenomenon to establish that market is the decision maker. Market decides all. Fourthly, how do we deal with the attention economy and what happens to those who are not in a position to attract the attention? Do we recognize them or do we allow them to be unrecognized? We allow them to be dealing with the situation that they face, which is very challenging. And fifth, how do we deal with the fact that although there is an absence of evidence, and this is applicable in the scholarship also, I mean, there are many people who are in the habit of giving so many references to whatever argument they make in a scholarly written research paper, and then one really wonders whether those references are really authentic, original, and what kind of references are there which would give some foundation to those references itself. So it's a circle kind of a thing, but then absence of evidence need not be considered as evidence of absence. So these are the 5 challenges as a lay person, I believe, are there we will have to deal with when we discuss human rights as human values. In this particular debate, I would also like to flag 2 more issues, which is about dignity. How do we deal with human dignity? I mean, situations I believe we can imagine where human rights are protected, but still human dignity is denied. So whether dignity is also to be considered as human right, that is a critical question we will have to, and the entire human rights fraternity perhaps will have to find answers to. Secondly, how do we deal with the fact that my human rights could be protected if my neighbor follows human duties? Somebody's rights are hinged upon somebody's observance of or following of his or her duties. So this commitment to duties, I believe, is the mother of human rights. And therefore, although the right-based discourse all around the world is now so very established that it is difficult to challenge it. But perhaps sitting here in Nalanda, what we can certainly say is, and the global community also perhaps will have to arrive at this conclusion, that you cannot discuss human rights delinking them from human duties. Because unless and until the powers that be or the individuals or the sections in the society commit themselves to fundamental human duties, the human rights of others, whosoever it may be, cannot be protected. And that leads me also to the particular question, it's a fact in a way, that, and Rambho Mali Prabodhini, which is the organization which has been working as the secretariat of the C20, long back, some 15 years before, there was a particular question we had dealt with, and we had also appeal the State Human Rights Commission in Maharashtra because there was a particular case. The case was that in a particular area where there was some community conflict, the policemen who were appointed there to protect a particular monument, kind of, were butchered and they were killed by an angry mob. So the question was, if the police personnel are supposed to be the custodians of your human rights, who are the custodians of their human rights? That is a fundamental question. And then we had appealed the State Human Rights Commission. They conducted a hearing on that subject and then gave a ruling that the senior persons in the police force will have to take care of the human rights of the police constable and other staff of the police force. But then this is a question because we just cannot always escape by avoiding all these critical issues if we really want this particular debate about human rights to be taken to a different level. And I believe today in a world where human rights movements are seen as lopsided, human rights activists are considered as partisan, I believe we can bring more authenticity to the entire discourse about human rights, not just in India but globally, if we are ready to address all these critical issues, find answers to them and provide a message of Nalanda. Thank you very much.